Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. It's yet another version of Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, our favorite podcast, and I hope yours too. And with us today, Bob McDonald. Just Say Yes is the book. It's a memoir. Bob is known as a science journalist. He has an Order of Canada, an asteroid named after him, and all sorts of fun stuff. So Bob, we'll jump right in. What prompted you to take on this project after doing so many, well, I'll say non-fiction, but the sort of more hardcore reporting kind of project?
Well, Dennis, this book came out of many people asking me, what's your background? How did you come to host Quirks and Quarks on National Science Radio program on CBC? And when I tell people that I'm actually a university dropout and former construction worker, they go, what? So how come you're on the National? How come you get to do all this stuff? And so I decided to write it down, and that's what my book is about. It's called Just Say Yes, because my career has evolved without my planning by people opening opportunity and saying, hey, why don't you try that? You'd be good at that. And even though I wasn't qualified to do it, I said yes, because it looked like something interesting and something I wanted to do. And I found that when you say yes, it changes your life. And that's happened to me over and over again. It's still happening now. And so that's what I wanted to write down.
And you're in Victoria, so you ride a motorcycle. What's it like riding a motorcycle in the rain in Victoria?
Well, actually, I was just out this morning. It was beautiful.
Okay.
And, we have these wonderful twisty, windy roads. It's 10 degrees out here. And, I've been riding motorcycles my whole life. I'm on number 22. And I do long-distance riding usually, like across the country or all over the continent, because I just love exploring by motorcycle because you're always outside.
Yep.
You're always in tune with the environment, the weather, but also the geography. You know, you feel it gets cool when you go over a mountain. It gets hot down in the valleys. You smell the wheat on the prairies and all that. So it's a very, very involved experience. And when you go somewhere on a motorcycle, you really feel like you've gone there. It's almost like taking a giant walk across the country because you're always outside. So it's always been a favorite form of transport for me.
And across the prairies these days, you'll smell the wheat and the weed, but that's okay. So we're all involved in that. The title of Bob McDonald's memoir, Just Say Yes. And the title you've just explained, because Just Say Yes opens lots of doors. So let's go back a bit. You started the book by saying you were 7 years old, and the Sputnik thing had happened. And you read about it in the Aurelia Packet and Times, my favorite newspaper title of all time. So is that where the curiosity for you started, back with seeing Sputnik?
Yes, and I remember that headline. The front page of the paper had a black and white drawing of the Earth and a circle around it and a little ball with some antenna sticking out of it, and the headline was something like, Russians launch first artificial moon. And it was, wow, we're in space. And everybody was actually afraid of it because the Russians had put something that could go all the way around the Earth, and if they could do that, they could put a nuclear weapon up there. Ooh, that's really horrible.
Yep.
But I thought, space, this is really great. And then I started following the space race to the moon, and I knew all the names of the early astronauts, John Glenn and Gordon Cooper and Alan Shepard and all those guys. And then I watched all of the moon landings, not just the first one, but all of them. And this was just an exciting time to be alive. Here we were leaving the Earth. And at the same time, my mother gave me a book that I still have, by the way. It's called The Planets, and it was a Golden Library of Knowledge, a thin book designed for kids with illustrations of what the planets are like. And back then, we hadn't been to the planet yet, so they were just illustrations. But I realized that the Earth was only one of a whole series of planets, a whole family, and the others are all really, really different. And because we were going to the moon so quickly, we did that in, 9 years, 8 years?
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to be taking holidays on the moon. I'm going to be going to Mars and skiing at the North Pole and all this. So, yeah, my fascination with space started right from a kid because I witnessed it. And it's astounding to me now to think that the entire space program has happened within my lifetime, one human lifetime. It went from zero, and now we're trying to get back to the moon again. It's amazing.
Why do you think it took so long for anybody or any nation to return after going there and the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, well, I think there's two reasons. One, the first time we went there, President John F. Kennedy basically wrote a blank check to NASA, and he said, "Here, go there. I don't care what it costs, just go." And so there were tremendous resources available. 400,000 people were involved, in the entire country involved in putting that program together, designing this new technology, and they took chances. They took incredible risks to do that. And then once it was done, sort of the interest, that was it, and after the last mission, interest waned in the public mind, so the budget was cut, and then there was a shift. Instead of going out to the moon, let's try living in space on a space station. And that's when we've been stuck there for the last, ever since 1972. So now we're trying to go back and reinvent all that technology, and finding that it's not easy to go back. We're seeing these robots that are crashing on the moon, rockets that are blowing up. They still do. So yeah. I thought we'd be a lot farther ahead than we are by this time.
Actually, I think I did too, but that's neither here nor there. However, was just finished a book called Mercury Rising about the Mercury astronaut program.
Yeah.
And I guess, like you said, Kennedy wanted to spend an unlimited check, as you said, but there was reaction or resistance to spending all that money in the U.S., especially on this sort of a ethereal project. So is there always been kind of a resistance right from the time of Galileo to any kind of scientific advance in your mind, do you think?
Yes, there are always those who resist change, who resist anything new, and in terms of the space program, they say, well, why aren't we spending that money here on Earth? Yeah. And when you look at it, the amount that we spend on space, especially here in Canada, our Canadian Space Agency costs each of us about $15 a year. If you take the budget of the space agency and divide it by the population of Canada, it's about $15 a year. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
We spend more than that on beer.
Exactly. I was just going to say, yes, that's less than the cost of a picture.
Yeah, and out of space technology, we get weather reports, we get all the environmental monitoring. We wouldn't even know about climate change if it wasn't for robots that look down on the Earth and measure ocean currents and climate and all that stuff. That's all come from space. And we've seen the Earth as a whole from the moon, from the far side of the moon. And we've learned about our place, and then we get technology out of it as well. We get computers, we get Teflon frying pans or whatever. Right. But it's really taught us a lot. And so for that little bit of money, we're getting our highest technology. It demands the highest education to work in the space industry, and we get these incredible role models like our Canadian astronauts for $15 a year. I think it's a pretty good deal.
Pretty good deal. And just as an aside, how far up is the space station?
Not very far. It's only about 400 kilometers. So that's not much. That's like Toronto to Ottawa, Vancouver to Kelowna, or something like that.
Something like that.
It's not very far. Nope. So we're barely off the Earth, and that's where we've been for since 1972. So we have a long way to go.
Right. I was thinking, space. To me doesn't seem like space. To me, space would be between Mars and Jupiter or something. But
right. But on the other hand, we have sent robots to every planet in our solar system. We've had robots from Mercury all the way up to Pluto, and I have followed all of those as well. And those are the real explorers. Those are the ones who boldly go where no one's gone before. And in many cases where humans will never go. We can't go to Jupiter; it'll kill you.
Right.
In fact, most of the planets will kill you.
One way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have cars driving around on Mars right now. We had a helicopter there for a while ago. And so that's really, to me, the true space exploration. People in space, that's fine. But it's the robots that really give us the insight into what these other worlds are really like.
And that one, the rover on Mars, that's still going after all these years? That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're nuclear powered. And they don't talk much about that, but they have little nuclear fuel bundles on them that keep them going. And every robot that's been sent out, that's been successful, has gone way beyond its warranty. They designed them to run for, they said, this is a 3-year mission, and then 20 years later, they're still running. I wish they could do that with my motorcycle.
Right.
They're kind of hardy, but they're incredibly durable. Yeah.
Do you have an actual car as well, or?
I have a little two-seater sports car that I've had for a while, but I don't drive it very much. I have an electric bicycle that I just got that I really love. That's what I get around in the city on. They're really wonderful, and I use the motorcycle for long distance. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back a bit to your Elvis impersonation as a 6-year-old. How did that come about?
Well, I'm the youngest of 4 in my family, and there's a big gap between the other 3 and myself. They're all 2 years apart. Then 7 years went by, and I came along. I was a surprise.
Uh-huh.
And my mother told me it was because of a hayride or something. I don't know. But anyway, I came along and said, so when I was a kid, my siblings were all into Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and all of those 50s rock stars. And we had all those albums at home. Yep. And when I was still young enough to be at home, they would go to school and I would play their records. Ah. So I knew I learned all those songs. And so I could do Elvis imitations. And I used to entertain neighbors with that. You know, I could do Hunka Hunka Burnin' Love or Hound Dog or all those things. It was really fun. So, I can still do it, but I don't do it very often.
So when they were in school back home, there was a whole lot of shaking going on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, really.
So, and apparently, like a lot of us who end up in broadcasting, I think, not a very good student in the traditional sense in school?
No, I was a terrible student. My report cards always came back with a note from the teacher that said, Bobby can do better.
Yep.
I barely passed. I was always in the 50s and 60s.
Yep.
I just wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't for me. I couldn't get science, believe it or not, yep. and mathematics, terrible at it, chemistry, all that stuff. But I managed to scrape my way through. But by second year university, I just dropped out of it. Now, what I was good at, or they told me I was good at, was acting. Yeah. I got into school plays. In high school, I got the lead in Oklahoma, the musical.
Where the waving wheat can sure smell sweet.
Yeah. That's right. I sang all that stuff. Yeah. And I entered, our school entered the Simpsons Drama Festival, which is an Ontario-wide festival for high school students. And we entered a play, and I got Best Actor out of that, which totally blew me away because I didn't have a lead part. I was a sidekick, but they gave me Best Actor, and that was a big deal for me because like I grew up in Aurelia, and we didn't have a lot of money. Neither my parents made a lot, and we were. It gives you that feeling of not being good enough, right? Because we couldn't do what other families did. We couldn't take vacations to Disneyland or anything like that. We had to just barely get by, and so it gives you that. Well, you're just not like everybody else. Yeah. So to win Best Actor for me was huge. Like, wow, I'm finally good at something better than everybody else. Right. It was a big deal.
So that leads us, dropped out of university, let's say, bounced around odd jobs, like you said, a construction worker and things like that. How'd you end up then? The Ontario Science Centre, I guess, was your big break. So how'd that all come about?
That came about from my girlfriend at the time when I was in my early 20s, and she was still in university, and the Ontario Science Centre used to hire students during the summer to act as hosts, to host the public, and to do demonstrations, standing people's hair up with static electricity, and freezing flowers and liquid nitrogen and all that stuff. And I had visited her there at the Science Centre. I thought, wow, this place is fabulous. And because it combined my two loves of science and entertainment and theater. Like I like science, but I wasn't good at doing it. But I like what I did. Yeah. And so she told me, she said, they're hiring full-time staff. After we go back to school, you'd be good at that. And she got me an appointment with the guy who was hiring. So I drove my truck to the Science Centre. It took a little company time. And I met this guy. And I just talked his ear off. I said, I'd love to work here. This is fabulous. This is great. I don't even know what I said. And he just stopped me. And he said, you're the kind of person we'd like to have here. And he hired me on the spot. My enthusiasm got me the job. Wow. And it changed everything. I went from, wearing a blue collar shirt to a white lab coat. But I had to learn really fast because one of the pieces of apparatus we had to demonstrate was this gigantic laser that would burn holes through a fire brick.
Oh.
And so I had to learn how to not only operate it, but explain it. And so, do you know what the word laser stands for? It's actually an acronym.
Light amplified something radiation.
Yeah, that's good. You know more than most people. It's light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. That's what laser stands for. Wow. I couldn't even say that when I walked into the Science Center. But they took me under their wing. They gave me the background. They taught me the stuff. So I had to learn about that. Well, that's a lot of physics involved there. Right. Cryogenics, with the freezing flowers and liquid nitrogen, that's a super cold, 200 degree below zero liquid. It's still a liquid. I had to learn all about that. How does that work? Well, rockets use cryogenic fuels like liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen. That's how rockets fly. Ah, yes. And, things like that. So the Science Center taught me fundamentals in science and how to make it fun and how to make it entertaining. And and then out of that came the media. And whenever I went on the media, they said, "Hey, you're good. You want to come back and do stuff?" I said, "Okay." So the Science Center, I said yes to. The media, I said yes to. And here it is.
Here it is. You just said yes, as you say. Just say yes. So first, before you're well known around the world for Quirks and Quarks, but that started back a bit was Wonderstruck.
That's right. Another friend of mine told me that the CBC was putting together a children's science television show, and they were looking for a host. Give them a call. I did the same thing. I went to the CBC. I met the producer, Liz Fox, talked to her, told her what I was doing, what I was interested in, and we did a pilot program, and she liked it. And so we did that show, and we did it for 6 years. Wonderstruck was a half-hour show on every week. And we were in, I think it was like 12 countries around the world. The sun never set on Wonderstruck. We were in all the British Commonwealth countries. Oh, good. We were in the Caribbean, we were in South Africa, we were in Australia. And I thought of it like nature of things with a sense of humor. Yeah. We were encouraged to be crazy and fun. And one of the segments that we had in that program was called the Kitchen Demo, which I did in my kitchen. Where I would use everyday things out of the kitchen to show how you can show scientific principles. And hey, try this at home, kids. Right. And spun those off into a couple of books that I did. But Wonderstruck was very popular because it was in friendly language, but we were still dealing with science in as many creative ways as we could. And we didn't have a studio either. We had to do everything out in the field and be innovative with no budget. It was a fun show to work on.
Yeah, and somewhere along the line, we also have the greatest Canadian invention. What is the greatest Canadian invention?
Well, it was a tie between, we had a tie between insulin, the light bulb, and the telephone, which are all Canadian inventions. People think Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but he didn't. He bought the patent from two guys from Toronto who actually invented the incandescent bulb. But we put it out there, and insulin won. So insulin because and I'm okay with that because it's changed the lives of a lot of people.
No kidding.
But
and Banting and Best and the rest of the group apparently just donated, as it were, the patent to the University of Toronto Hospital. So in true Canadian fashion, they didn't make any money off of it. They just said, "Here, this is for the good of mankind."
Absolutely.
So what is your... Back to Quirks and Quarks now. Where'd the name come from? Because it's a wonderful name.
Yeah. The producer who first started Quirks and Quarks, Diana Filer, she's still alive, and she now lives in Vancouver, and I see her every once in a while. She's almost 90 now, and she's really feisty. And I asked her that. I said, "Where did you get the name Quirks and Quarks?" She said, "In a bar." There was a regular bar we used to hang out in. A bunch of us were sitting there. I want to do a new science show. Let's go on. And they came up with this name, Quirks and Quarks. Super. And so a quirk is something that's strange and odd. And a quark is the smallest thing that we know of. If you take anything and break it down into molecules and then atoms, and then you get down to the nucleus and protons and neutrons, you break those down. The smallest thing we've ever made is a quark. Nobody's been able to break a quark into anything smaller, so it's a fundamental particle. So that's what a quark is. We're all made of quarks.
And the show's still going strong, I trust?
Absolutely. In
Good.
fact, this year, in October of this year, will be the 50th anniversary of Quirks and Quarks, and we're going to bring Diana back, and we're going to do a special show and look at science over the last 50 years and what Quirks has seen over that time. Because in the last 50 years, a whole lot has happened. You know, we have genetics and all the things we're doing with genetic engineering now that wasn't around at the beginning. All the space stuff, all the physics. You know, it's really quite exciting. So we're going to do a special thing. And what's remarkable about Quirks is that the ratings have never gone down.
Right.
We've had shows where we're Saturday at noon. We've always had that spot. And there have been shows ahead of us and behind us that have come and gone. But the ratings for Quirks have never gone down. In fact, they've gone up. And it shows that people are interested in science. They're interested in fundamental science. And so it's kind of neat.
And the way you present it, though, is also a key. It's not dry and lab coaty type stuff. It's hey, this is what happens if you do this, but tell me what happens if that happens. And the person on the other end says, oh well, this good question, and on you go, and it just keeps the listener involved. Because I was in radio for a long time, so I know that you have to keep the listener involved. So that's what the trick is, and it's very hard sometimes to do.
Well, it's all about storytelling. I mean, that's what it is. It's storytelling. What's your story? Who are you? What's the setting? Every story has a setting. It has characters. It has action. This happens to be science. So scientists say, yeah, well, I was out on a Zodiac trying to tag a great white shark with a holy cow, what was that like? And then, so there's the action. Why were you doing that? Well, they're endangered. We want to know where they go. We don't know where they go in the Pacific, whatever. And so it's always... the way we're telling it is like stories, and it's infinitely interesting for me because it's always new every week. I can't even tell you what's on next week's show. I don't know yet. We do each show each week. And in terms of making it friendly and approachable, that's because I need to understand the story. And this is where my lack of formal education, I think, comes in, because that makes me closer to the audience. I'm more on the audience side. If I had a PhD in chemistry and I'm talking to a chemist, we'd get into all the jargon and everything, and we'd lose the audience. Yep. But I'm coming at it from I can understand scientific language now. I've been at it long enough. I can understand what they're saying. But then when they do that, if they get lost in jargon, then I spin it back to them. So that when you hear me say, let me see if I got this right, which I say a lot, that's me thinking on the spot. Because they just said something that hurt me. Okay. So you just mentioned a toroidal vortex. Is that like a donut? Is that like a donut? And they go, yeah, it's shaped like a donut. It's sort of like a smoke ring. Yeah, it's like a smoke ring. Okay. That's the so then we go on from there. And so I need to do that to keep the audience engaged. So I feel like I'm a translator between the scientist and the audience. I'm going to translate the science and bring it to you and say, hey, here, this is interesting. I'm not handing out a PhD. I'm just saying, hey, this is interesting. Here's what happened this week. And it's fun. I love it. It's just great.
What are the behind? How does the show take? Like, are you live to air, or is it?
No. We record. The way it works, there are 4 producers, and they're really smart. They're way ahead of the game. They get all the embargoed press releases from universities, from journals, from science institutes, and they choose the stories on Mondays. They have a meeting on Monday, and they've all gathered this stuff up, and they'll divvy them up. Okay, I'm going to chase black holes. I'm going to chase some new gene. I'm going to chase insect sex or whatever. I don't know, whatever the topics are. And then they get on the phone, and they call the lead author on the paper, the first scientist, the scientist who's in charge of it, wherever they are in the world. Call them up and talk to them on the phone to make sure that we've got the story right, that we understand it, and that they can talk, that they can communicate well. They gather all the information up and send it to me, the background information, whatever articles have been written about it. They do that on Mondays and Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we do the interviews. So that's when I look at my calendar. Yeah. And at 10 o'clock, it's black holes. 11 o'clock, it's some hurricane study, whatever, all over the world. Yep. And then we do the interviews Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday we put the whole thing together for the Saturday broadcast. So that's the routine every week.
Wow.
So and Mondays and Tuesdays, I don't work at Quarks. I'm doing other stuff. I'm on the speaking circuit. I'm writing books or whatever, or on my motorcycle.
Yeah.
So Tuesday night, like tonight, this is we're talking on Tuesday. Tonight, I look at my calendar and I'm finding out who I'm going to be talking to tomorrow morning, and I've got to read that and be ready. And I work very closely with the producers to develop the script and the questions.
Yeah.
And before each interview, 15 minutes before each interview, we sit down and we have a little chat about the questions, and we go through all of them. And we work together on the questions so that by the time I talk to the scientists, I know the answers to all the questions I'm asking.
Uh-huh.
So my trick is to make sure I'm getting those answers.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, then I have to draw them out. So that's how we work.
Great. As an aside, again, what's the future of the CBC, in your opinion?
Well, the CBC is a national treasure. You know, it's a huge intellectual capital. It has an archive of Canadian history on tape. They're very, very smart people. We have extremely high journalistic standards. There's a whole book on the journalistic standards of the CBC to make sure that we're fair and balanced and accurate. And I just hope that it'll be preserved, especially radio. You know, we don't run commercials on radio, and we reach everyone in the country. I have people when I travel to remote communities, and they'll say, "Thank you for getting me out of this place, for taking me out in my imagination." And we're providing a service to reflect Canada back to Canada, to include Canada and the rest of the world in what we do. I mean, Canada does great science. A lot of the stuff that we do on Quarks is Canadian science, and nobody else does that. You know, so I'm hoping that it will survive. And I just have to hope. You know, we have a long history, and we do what other people can't do.
And I hope that people can get the message that it's not a propaganda network for the Liberals or the Conservatives or the NDP or somebody else. Yeah.
Nobody tells us what to report on. We don't get any pressure from the government, anyone like that. We don't. We go what's in the news, what's happening, who's doing it, and we follow that. We follow the stories. We're not told to bias ourselves in one way or another. That's against our ethic.
Good. And a couple more questions, Mr. Bob McDonald. The trick. Have you found any tricks to memoir writing? Because a lot of folks are into memoir writing these days. So what did you find out during your journey through writing a memoir?
Well, it was kind of a cathartic experience because, you know, to put your life all together, I've always included myself in my books, a little bit of my experiences, because I've been very fortunate to travel all over the world and have a lot of different experiences, both professionally and personally. And I've included those in my book. But to do one just about me was a little different. I didn't want to sound arrogant. I just wanted to tell the story, both say, here are some crazy things I've done, but there's a chapter that was very difficult to write about my childhood because I was sexually abused by my father and then later again by a stranger. I wasn't even sure I should write about that, but it was part of my history. I've never ever written about it or even talked about it in public, but I thought that maybe because it was so long ago now and I've dealt with it and gotten past it, that maybe I could be a living role model for anyone who suffered child abuse, that you can get past it. You'll never forget it, but you can lock it away in some deep part of your brain and then use the rest of your brain to get on with your life. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me about that, saying thank you for coming out. And there are so many people who suffered that, and it's unreported. You know, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to talk to. So I feel like I've offered a little service in that way. But really, you just got to sit down and decide where do you want to start and what do you want to do. And the hardest part is getting started. You know, where do you start your story? You don't want to start, well, I was born in 1951. No, you don't want to do that. So I decided to start with the very first time I choked in front of an audience. I've been giving speeches since my Science Center days, since the 1970s, in front of large audiences, and I've never had problems. I don't write anything down. I speak freely out of my head. I can talk for 45 minutes without stopping. But there's one time that I choked, and I just completely, and it was when I got my first honorary doctorate at the University of Guelph. And I stopped, because I was giving the convocation speech. And I stopped and I said, I'm really sorry. I said, this is the first time I've seen my name on a university diploma. And it was a turning point. And so that's where I began my book. It was from that. And then, so how did I get here kind of thing? And you fill in the gaps. So you find your structure, how do you want to tell it? Where do you want to start? And then just sit down and do it. Don't think too much about it. Just write it out.
Just write it out. And so one more, Bob, Just Say Yes, the book. What do you hope it will do?
Well, I hope it might provide a little inspiration that if, a kid from a small town, low-income, abusive family can become successful and have people wanting his autograph or recognized across the country, then anybody can. You don't need to be someone special. If you just take advantage, if you have the courage to say yes when you see an opportunity, our first instinct is to say no. Oh, I'm not qualified. Yeah. I've never done that. Yeah. Oh, I'm scared, which is really what you're saying. I'm scared. Yeah. But if you say yes, you do get scared. And I found there's three things. One, say yes. Two, when you get scared, focus on the very first thing you need to do. Just that. And it's usually ask somebody, how do I do this? Right. And they'll tell you, do that. And once you do that, you'll see the next step, and then that, and that, and that. And then the third point is finish it. Finish what you started. Right. Just get it done.
Get it done.
Don't worry about being the best in the world. There's always going to be someone better than you. Yeah. But just get it done. So say yes, focus on the first step, and finish it, and you'll be amazed what it takes you. And that's happened to me again and again and again. People say, do you want to be on TV? Sure. Do you want to be on radio? Yeah. Yes. Do you want to have your own production company and produce your own videos? Yes. Even though I wasn't doing it. And it just kept happening to me. So that formula works for me. I think it can work for anyone, regardless of the context. Just if there's something you want to do, go for it.
Go for it. And like someone said to me recently, success is the enemy of good. Or perfection, because if you're striving for perfection, you won't get anything done. But if you just say, this is going to be, it's the best I can do, and let her rip. So that's probably the key.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's the difference between the doers and the talkers, because the talkers will stop before they finish, saying, oh, it's not perfect, and they don't get it done. Yeah. But if you do get it done, even if it's not the greatest, you got it done. And then the next time, it'll be better. You improve over time, but you got it done. That's the most important thing. And the other thing that I hope people will get is that life is too short. There's a whole lot of Earth out there to go see. Go see the world. Get off North America. Go see how the rest of the planet lives, and make the most of the short time we have on this beautiful planet.
So just say yes. Thank you, Bob McDonald, for being with us today.
Been my pleasure, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.